Welcome to the Faith at Work podcast presented by Main Street Youth Ministries of Main Street United Methodist Church here in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. My name is Blake Moore, and I'm the Minister of Youth and Families here at Main Street UMC, and I'm the host of this podcast. Today's guest is Kate Howard, who is make sure I get this right, the Assistant Vice President of Enrollment and Dean of Admissions at Southern Miss here in Hattiesburg. Is that right?
That is right.
I had Director of Admissions. I know that's not right. So let me make sure I get the full thing. So, the podcast, every episode, we're just wanting to talk about how faith and how Jesus has impacted and continues to impact our workplace and our career journey. So we're so excited to have Kate here. Kate, how are you?
Good.
You doing okay?
I am. Surprisingly, it's weird times for sure. So.
It really is. It really is, and we'll probably get into that here in a little bit. But I just wanted to start off with the classic question. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And go whatever direction you want to go to.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, my name is Kate Howard, and I am fairly new to Hattiesburg. Not super new, but I've been in Hattiesburg. This month will mark 4 years, and so I came for the job that I'm currently in, which is the Assistant Vice President for Enrollment over at Southern Miss. Typically, the Assistant Vice President is not in shorts, but at Southern Miss, we have been working from home for, I think we're in week 9 maybe now of maybe 10 weeks, and so that changes it up a little bit, but I migrated south from the Memphis area, so I spent about 20 years in Memphis and about 15 of that working at the University of Memphis. And so that's where I was before I made my step into Hattiesburg. So that's a little bit about me.
That's awesome. I went to we lived in Jonesboro.
Yeah,
right down the road from Memphis.
Yep.
Yeah. So I graduated from Southern Miss and went to Arkansas State and got a master's in higher ed there and worked as an admissions counselor. That's really funny. So where'd you grow up? Where were you born?
So I was born and raised in a small town in West Tennessee, Covington, Tennessee, about an hour north of Memphis. And actually, fun fact, if you look directly across the Mississippi River from Covington, you are looking at Jonesboro. And so it's just across the river from Jonesboro, Arkansas. So that's where my family is. That's where they still are. I spent my first 18 years there in the same house, in the same community, went to school with the same kids, kindergarten through your senior year. Some of the things that probably some of your youth have experienced.
Yeah,
absolutely. For sure, so.
That's awesome. Well, what kind of drove you? What kind of got you into higher education and the career that you're in?
So, interestingly enough, I liked college so much that I just decided I would stay. College exposed me to a lot of different things, different ways of thinking, different ideas. Like I said, I grew up in a small town. Everybody sort of talked alike, walked alike, did a lot of things very similarly, and college stretched me in some new ways and also provided some really great mentors throughout my collegiate experience. And I began about my junior year of college to think about going into higher ed. I came from a family who I was a first-generation college student. Both my parents went to college, neither finished at the time, but I went. I came from that sort of family where getting a graduate degree wasn't always the first next step, and so I ended up getting a job right out of college at Belhaven College, which is in Jackson. It's Belhaven University now, and worked some at their Memphis campus. They have a satellite campus in Memphis, and then ended up getting my graduate degree from there while I was working and doing some things. But I just like students, so in full confession, I do better with college students than I do sometimes with 7th through 12th grade students. I like you guys a little bit better when you've made the next step into adulthood. But no, I just think a lot of growth happens in collegiate experiences, and I enjoy watching that and developing students in that way. Probably similarly to the way you develop students in youth group, just in a different setting, for sure.
I would agree. And I think we're kind of kindred spirits because I was the same way, at Southern Miss, to the top. I was a student tour guide for 3 years, was on Eagle Connection, ambassadors for the university, and just loved it so much. I had such a great college experience that I wanted other people to have. Right. They weren't going to have my exact one, but I wanted people to know that you can have a good experience. And so I went to Arkansas State, had a master's in higher education there, and there's a whole other journey after that leading me back to ministry, but I still love higher education,
Sure.
and that's great. So, so tell us a little bit about your faith journey. So how, where, all, maybe from the beginning until now, I know it's a lot, but
that is a lot.
and you go with it wherever you want to go.
So let me say this. I think that one of the things that you just said that I think is really important is that faith is a journey, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But I grew up, as I mentioned, in Covington, Tennessee. Probably the first place that I went outside of my parents' home was the church nursery. So I grew up in church, a lot like a lot of folks had that experience. Both of my we went to a relatively small Baptist church, Southern Baptist church. Both sets of my great grandparents had stained glass windows in the church in their memory or honor. So my family had been at that church for generations. And I actually went there all the way through college and really into my adult life. And so I grew up with a full indoctrination of all things Jesus and all the right Sunday school words and all the things. And so in the Baptist church, your experience as it relates to baptism was a little bit different. And I was baptized at age 10 when I felt like I had understood the notion of salvation and what that looked like, and fully believed in the essence of Jesus as our Savior. And so I know that looks differently here in our Methodist faith, but I was about 10 years old and did all the youth group things, was a leader in youth group, loved youth group. I think that's a really important piece. And I will say that one thing that I think is important for youth to know about, and one thing that I think was really important in my faith journey, is that we create, just like we create, when people say the word habits, most people think that those are you associate with sort of bad habits, whatever that looks like for you. But I think we also create good habits. And so one thing that was really important to my family was church attendance and things like that. And so it just never was an option to miss church or not be that was very much a part of our culture. And so absolutely. I took that habit with me to college. And so that was something that spilled over. Yeah. In college, I explored a lot of different campus ministries. The Baptist Student Union on our campus at Memphis at that time wasn't thriving. It wasn't great. And so I went to RUF, which is Reformed University Fellowship. It's traditionally a Presbyterian ministry, but I actually found my home, my campus ministry home at the Church of Christ ministry, the Christian Student Center, which was an interesting sort of different experience for me, and started to learn more about different denominations within the Christian faith, particularly Protestant denominations in some ways. And I think that's one of the things that attracts me to college life now, is you get exposed to friends who have come from different backgrounds and are doing different things. And so I still remain very faithful to my home church. It was about an hour away, and my whole family was there. And so that's where I continued to go. I actually taught Sunday school there for a good bit. I taught a class of women who were between age 75 and about 95, and I taught them up until I moved to Hattiesburg. And so that has been was part of that. But I think for the first time in my life, I was nearing 40 years old when I moved to Hattiesburg. I was in my late 30s, and I got to start making some choices because I'd always felt sort of tied to that family church and that family sort of thing. And so I had always been very drawn to the Methodist church because Methodism has, I'm a very practical person, and for those of you who have studied our faith enough, you know that the method part in Methodism really speaks to John Wesley's methods of how he grew his faith in the notion of a faith journey. And so I think in some denominations, particularly in my originating in the Baptist church, it felt like your faith was an experience or a moment or something that solidified it, as opposed to a consistent journey throughout your life. And so several things happened after I moved to Hattiesburg. In fact, I visited a few churches, not very many. I think I came to Main Street was probably the third or fourth church I visited, I never left because it just seemed to be a good fit for me.
We're excited for you.
I'm certainly glad to be here. Then I had a great friend who actually lost his battle with cancer shortly after I moved here, and he happened to be my next door neighbor. And at his memorial service, the pastor spoke about the notion of this journey piece. And I think our faith ebbs and flows, and so I think sometimes we feel closer and sometimes we feel farther away from our faith journey. There are times that I think that we question, and I'll tell you, if you're not questioning your faith, then you're probably not doing it right, because questioning drives us.
See, doubt to me is not the opposite of faith. Apathy would be,
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're not, if you're apathetic towards it, I mean, you don't care. But if you're questioning,
yeah.
you obviously are concerned about it. You want to know more.
Well,
so,
you're consistently learning.
Right. Yeah.
I've noted when you question and push on things, and so I think that. And I'm very grateful for having had a very firm faith foundation in my family. That's. I mean, you cannot negate what. Rich experience that provides for people, but I know that lots of people find their faith later in life,
right.
And sometimes I'm envious of those people because they explore differently than I did, as opposed to being sort of just indoctrinated into it from the very beginning. So I think, regardless of how you come to it, it should be ongoing. It should be the journey, and I think you should question it, and the things that you innately within yourself find to be true to who you are, and so I think that's an important part of it.
I think we could end the podcast there. That would be great. Like that was awesome.
That's a little bit about my faith journey.
That was great. That was fantastic. Well, the whole goal of this podcast is to talk about how your faith journey interacts with your career journey, and how Jesus has impacted your steps along the way, your job now, and so in my experience in higher education, the way that I've always taken, I'm a sensitive person. Like I'm super sensitive, and higher education, I feel like is a place where you can't be sometimes, and I've experienced some politics and some issues that come with that, and I've experienced a lot of rejection, as an admissions recruiter, and admissions office, and in my experience, we've rolled out the red carpet for people, and we've had great connections with people. We're like, oh, they're coming here. We've had such a great relationship, and all of a sudden they go to Ole Miss or University of Arkansas, with Arkansas State, and just something where it's kind of cuts you to your core, and that may not even be the biggest issue you may run into in your higher education career. To me, that's big, but that may be topical compared to some things you've seen. So, in your career journey, how is your faith? I love the way you put. It is a faith journey, because wherever you go, your faith goes with you. So in your families, even when you go on vacation, your faith is going with you, and so in your career, your faith goes with you. So where have you seen that interact, in the positive things, the negative things,
For sure. I think if your faith doesn't go with you, then you're doing something wrong. Then it seems to be more of a Sunday morning kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But I think we do take our belief systems into everything that we do, and for me, work is hard. So I think that it's important for people to know that, particularly young people, to know that there are parts of every job, no matter what job you have, no matter what career path you choose, that are difficult. I mean, there are days that, there's a reason why people love a weekend, or, that it's a break from some of the things that happen in your daily work life. And so I'm fortunate to have a really great job. The community really supports the University of Southern Mississippi here in Hattiesburg, and so I enjoy the work. I work with some phenomenal people. The staff that work with me are great. But I think what I encounter in my job that's important from a faith perspective, and let me say a little bit more about what it is I do. You hit on a lot of the admission stuff.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I work. The enrollment services is just this fancy long name for the people who get students through all of the processes to get them into school and basically keep you enrolled. And so that includes, for me, the Office of Admissions, the Office of Orientation and Transition, the Office of Financial Aid, the Office of Undergraduate Scholarships, and the Office of Enrollment Management Technology. So there's 5 spaces that I get to work with on a daily basis. And for me, so much of that is about the people who make those things work. And if you've been in the Christian faith very long, you know that we're reliant on one another, that we're made for connection and community and those sorts of things. And so I think that plays into how we do our jobs in a lot of ways and how we interact with people. And as you go through sort of your career, whatever career path you choose, I think you find some of these guiding principles and people. I like to work. I like work. I like hard work. I like to do yard work. I just like work in general. And so one of the scriptures that I've always referred to is in Colossians. I think it's 3:23. Is whatever you're doing, do it as if you're working for the Lord. So whether you're picking up trash or cleaning up your room or making your bed, do it in a way that says, man, this is honoring to God, or this would be honoring to the people that I'm working with in a way that I would want to honor God. And so I think that's one of the things that I take every day. And then one of the things
that impacts everything, right?
Does,
I mean, that's,
it really does.
yeah.
But the
also hard.
It is very hard. It's very hard to want to give 110%, particularly to jobs that maybe you don't enjoy as much. And some of the youth may be in jobs and it's not maybe their career path, but it's a job that you're fortunate enough to do. It's a summer work job. It's an internship. It's a lawn service. Whatever it is that thinking about the way you're honoring the people for whom you're working, and then in turn honoring God. But as I moved up, because I started kind of like you, I worked for Belhaven College as a coordinator for a while, and then I came back to being an admissions counselor. And you get rejected. I blame youth. It's because
me too, but
it's because
I still love them. Okay.
The decision making of an 18-year-old basically is your whole job. Yep. Like you're really, you know, when you're in that space.
I could not get used to that.
And it's like, oh my goodness, this person all of a sudden decided to go, University of Arkansas because it's where their girlfriend's going now, or that's where they're going. You're like, oh my gosh. And so those things really can play into that. But as I moved up, it became clear to me that there are things that do get more difficult. But the higher you climb sometimes on a professional ladder, the more responsibility that falls to you in a leadership role. And when I moved to Hattiesburg, the piece of work that I inherited was sort of seen as a little bit of a mess. So enrollment had been down for several cycles, and I just remember the first few months I would go into work would be so hard because there seemed like so much to sort of manage and clean up. And I would think about, and I can't remember if Todd had preached on it around that time or not, but I would think about the Ephesians 6 verses where it talks about putting on the armor of God.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when I would get ready for work, like I would be putting on my pants or fixing my hair, and I would be
your black on, your gold on,
I'd be like putting on the breastplate of righteousness, putting on the, and I mean, it was like I was trying to take in all the things that I knew would both protect me through that day and help me through that day. And I think when you think about doing that, just this notion of, you need to take those things, that sort of armor, those things that God equips us with, into most areas of your life. But it's really important, sort of in your work, in some ways. But and it does. It impacts everything that you do. You begin to approach people differently. I found that gratitude's a very important thing. If you can, even on your hardest days, if you can find something to be grateful for, and in Thessalonians, I think this is probably one of my all-time favorite verses. It talks about in everything giving thanks. So Second Thessalonians. I don't know. Y'all can get my
It's
scripture
in the
off.
word. No, it's all good. It's all good. You're bringing heat. I love it.
Thessalonians 5, but I don't know if it's first or second.
It's all good.
But
No worries.
it's this notion of in every situation give thanks. So
Yeah.
even on your hard days, whatever that looks like, and for some of you that may be at school or just find something about it. And sometimes it can be I could be sitting in a meeting and that meeting can be so heated and so difficult. Yeah. And in my mind I'm like, you know what? I am thankful that the air conditioning is working in this space because it will feel a little bit hotter if it weren't. And those sorts of things. You sort of think through some of that. But I think that's how faith plays. Your faith has to play into your work in practical ways because your work is how you're providing for your family or how you're keeping a roof over your head, and so you really want your faith to intersect with that in a very practical way and not forget what it looks like to be the hands and feet of Jesus.
Absolutely.
And you'll be better at this, Blake, than I am because preacher guys are better at this.
I don't know about that. Okay.
The quote about showing people, teaching people about Jesus or whatever, and then using the Bible if you have to, basically using your life.
Yes. I can't remember the quote.
I can't remember exactly how.
I think that was St. Francis of Assisi who said that.
It's basically like
maybe butchering that too. But
it's this notion of showing people.
It's like preach the gospel and use words if you have to.
Yeah, and that I think that plays out more in the workplace than anywhere else because unless you're you or unless you're Jeremy or Tyler, unless your vocation is tied to your faith, your real opportunity is to show people show people how Christians are different in some ways, how we approach things.
I love that because I feel like a lot of people probably think like, how can I share the gospel, as non-vocational? I mean, like you said, and yes, those actions. I mean, action speaks louder than the words is a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason, right? Because
people expect you to be the preacher guy.
Right,
people
exactly.
Expect you to be the Bible guy, to be the Jesus guy, to be the guy that has the right words, to do all those things. People don't always expect people within the workplace to act with compassion or kindness or patience or the things that are somewhat hard to come by.
And when they see that, they're like, okay, there's something different, right? Like, I want to know more about what she's got going on. Like,
where does she find that?
What is she thinking in the morning?
Exactly. And so I think those things make a real difference about how you make decisions, how you approach people.
Right. It's a perspective thing, right? Like this. Faith changes your perspective on everything. Right. How you work, your attitude in the day, like being grateful even about the air conditioner. All of that. Perspective is so huge. I think in everything that we do in life, and your faith shapes your perspective. And golly, that was a word like you just did. That was great. And we're coming up towards the end of the episode here, but I know you talked about in the beginning, we're working from home for the last 9 or 10 weeks because of the coronavirus, COVID-19, the Rona, whatever you want to call it. But how has that been for you in the higher education enrollment services area at Southern Miss, and what has been challenging, and how has your faith played a role in that?
So, in full disclosure, I live alone. I don't have a family here, so that has been hard. I think those of us who have not acknowledged the fact that whether it was a high school graduation or a birthday party or a vacation or coming to church every week or whatever it was we had on our calendar that we're missing, there's some grief associated with that. Like we're actually we're grieving that the way we do when we lose other things. And so I think a little bit of that has been hard to manage for everybody who's had to work from home. But from an enrollment perspective, believe it or not, we've been able to be super creative in how we interact with students. And the good thing about youth is that they love their phone. And so they're constantly connected in that way to all those things, and very comfortable with technology, more so than a lot of us. And so the hard parts have probably been adapting our procedures and ways that we do business, but really being able to connect with people through technology has been really cool.
Yeah.
I have had the opportunity, and it's interesting because I think Todd and Jeremy have said this a couple times in some of their either midweek devotionals or their sermons. About you've never had this much time to sort of refocus and study, and so I've been able to read some books that have helped sort of refocus my faith a little bit, and so that has been good, and it's really pointed to the fact that humans in general that God created us to be connected beings, to be in community with one another. That's been very highlighted. But one of the books that I've had the opportunity to read really recently is by a Christian author, and she writes mainly for women. So guys, you wouldn't care that much for it, but it has pushed on things like asking questions of your faith, and a really notion of, some days you're going to feel really disconnected to your faith, and I will say there have been days like that during this pandemic that I felt some lows, but then you get back and you sort of feel differently. But it's going to be a very challenging year from an enrollment standpoint, and so we know that that's coming. But those are things that we can control what we can, and we can't control what we can't, and so we're just going to go with it. But it's been interesting, and so I'm ready to go back and see people and do some normal things.
Me too,
for
me
sure.
Too. This is a blessing because
I was glad to be in a room with somebody having a conversation.
Well, what's to end our conversation today? What is one or multiple? And you've said so many great things today, and I'm so grateful. But if there's like one or two things that you could specifically say, maybe to our youth, because that's a lot of what this is geared towards now. We're probably going to send this to the whole church, but they're experiencing some different things now too, and a lot of them about to go into college, and they're already thinking about careers and things like that. So, what could be some advice that you would give them?
If I were giving career advice as it relates back to sort of your faith journey, I would say that one thing that is going to be important is to know that kind of your first job's probably not going to be your last job, and probably not your best job. And those are things that sort of happen in the lifespan of things. And as you approach your work, take your faith with you. As you approach college, take your faith with you. As you approach whatever next step it is. And so there's the first maybe 2 or 3 verses of James are about counting it joy when you go through tough circumstances. And I think sometimes transition, whether it's into the work world, whether it's into college, some of those things, it's really important. And maybe that goes back to the gratitude piece, just finding that something that's going well, something that's going right, and then capitalizing on that and finding something that you can be excited about. You're not going to love your job every day. I've said that. I think I don't like people who set unrealistic expectations for particularly for students. You're not going to walk out of college and make $1 million a year. You're not going to do some of these things that maybe you're imagining very differently. Remember that your parents have worked 20 and 30 years to get to where they are to provide for you. For some of them, that's looked like a long journey through professional school. I know medical school and law school and other things. And so just sort of remembering those transition pieces and what that looks like, and then finding some sense of gratitude and the notion of counting it joy when God stretches us, because you're gonna get stretched. You're gonna get stretched, and it's sometimes stretching doesn't always feel good on the front end, but I think that's a big important piece. And make the most of your situation, wherever that situation is. So,
I think you said something. So you said being grateful, or finding something that you're grateful for, and capitalizing on that. I love that. Like you need to, I'm grateful for this, and then just let it go by. Because your faith is not passive; it's active.
No, so let that be the thing that drives you, whatever that is in that space.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Kate, we're so grateful. I'm inspired, and I'm not even saying this for the camera. I'm not even saying it for the podcast. Like, I'm inspired by what you had to say today. And it makes me feel, I'm driven now. I'm motivated. So thank you so much for your words of wisdom, and being vulnerable and open to us. And we're praying for you, because I know this is weird for you and everybody at Southern Miss. So we are so grateful for you. Thank you for listening and watching. Our next podcast will have Eric Davis of the USM Wesley Foundation on with us, so you're not going to want to miss that. But Kate, thank you once again, and we'll be praying for you.
Thanks for all the work you do. And you guys are not going to want to miss Eric Davis. He's going to be so much better than me.
I don't know about that. You came with heat today.
He is so good.
You came with heat.
A great friend on campus and a neighbor, and so good. So yeah.
Well, thank you once again, and we will talk to you all soon. Thanks.